Thank you, worship team. In a monologue for a dramatic play called As You Like It, maybe some of you have seen it, by Shakespeare, the second act, the seventh scene, William Shakespeare, through a character named Jacques, I like that name, I don't know why, takes the audience on a journey of the complete life cycle of a man. And he starts by saying these words, and you might have heard these words before: all the world's a stage. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. You ever felt like that? That maybe you're just a player in a big theater, in a big movie. If you were on stage, if your movie was, if you were a motion picture, in what section of Netflix would they find you? Would they find you, would it be the drama section, where you're constantly dealing with crisis and broken relationships? Would they find you in the horror section, where you're constantly filled with anxiety and worry and fear, and there's tragedy in your life? Or maybe you'll be in an action movie. Your life was like constantly an adventure and will not let up, and your life constantly just keeps you on the edge. You're like, yes, my life is... I can think of some people in this church who are like that. Their life is on the edge constantly. Maybe for some of you, and I cannot think of people this way, but it could be, maybe your life is a boring documentary. This is my life. I get up, blah, 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 you know. Or maybe your life is a comedy. It's a motion picture that is like one big joke. Or maybe it's a science fiction where life is really surreal. You're not sure what's real and what's not, and you have a lot of questions. And maybe it's like the 1998 movie, The Truman Show. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that movie. It's an interesting, certainly entertaining movie. But you grow up living an ordinary life only to find out that you're on an enormous stage, and everyone around you is an actor in a reality TV show. It is very disheartening when the character played by Jim Carrey finds out, wait a minute, I've been living on a set this whole time. Since the day I was born, I've just been in a big reality TV show. It might as well be, as often as we are on surveillance cameras these days. Some of the recent accurate and yet conservative estimates say that you are 60 to 70 times a day on a camera. You're being recorded. Do you believe that? That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But if you think about it, let's say you drive to school or you drive to work, guess what? There are probably going to be cameras there. Lunch at a restaurant, there's a camera there, probably several. Driving, you stop at a stoplight, guess what? I've learned this the hard way. There's a camera there. There are traffic cams everywhere. You go to any type of store, merchandise store, or even a grocery store, guess what? There are cameras there. You stop for gas, guess what? There are cameras there. You pick up the kiddos from daycare, guess what? There are cameras there. You've come to church here today, guess what? There are cameras here. There are cameras that saw you walk in from outside, cameras that saw you in the hallway, and right now there's a camera on me, believe it or not. 3 of them. We won't get into that right now. And as you approach your house, if you have a Ring security doorbell, guess what? There is a camera on you. They're all over the place. And don't think you're safe at home, by the way. Nancy and I, we have no Ring. We have no Alexis or Alexa, whatever that's called. None of that. We have none of that stuff. But a few months ago, Nancy was involved in doing some activities with children where she was going to be, it was an event here at the church. She was going to be doing kind of a bubbles thing where kids would do these big bubbles, and it was really kind of a neat experience. But before that, the day before that, or 2 days before that, we were talking about it. I had found a recipe for bubbles that was really good. And I said, hey, look, we can get this, and here's some glycerine. And by the way, they recommend, now we're just talking to each other. This is not texting to each other. This is not a phone call. We're just talking to each other at the house. And I said, what you could really use is some Dawn Ultra, because that's what they recommend. Dawn Ultra soap for dishwashing soap. If you can get that, that'd be great. She's like, you know what? I already have Joy. We're going to do that. Blah, blah, blah. Keeney already hooked me up with some stuff. And okay, so that's what we did. The event came and gone. The very next day, I get on Amazon, and right away I get this advertisement that said, hey, are you looking for Dawn Ultra soap? I'm like, what? Like, what on earth? Wait a minute. Who said this? Where did you hear this? Google. We didn't even Google it, though. That was the thing. It wasn't like we Googled Dawn Ultra. So we didn't Google anything. This was just a conversation that we had. Now, were our phones around? Yeah. They weren't on anything, but I'm telling you, and I've had another conversation with a friend of mine that lives in Texas, Houston, Texas, that talked about that happening to him. Credible source, by the way. And what I've just told you is true. So listen, constantly we are being watched. We are being listened to. This is the reality. Now, I'm not here to scare you in any way. Truth is, some of this surveillance stuff is actually important, isn't it? We put it in the moment we got broken into about 6 years ago. It was Easter weekend, and somebody broke in to our church and stole all of our equipment in the back. And so we decided, okay, we need to do something. And so we put surveillance cameras so that wouldn't happen, right? Now, they're not perfect, but they help in some ways. But they also record everything we say and do, everywhere. And although we can take certain measures to minimize how much we are observed by technology, we can never avoid it completely. And no matter how much we try to shut it off, no matter how much we try to just turn everything off, and in fact, you can get on YouTube, believe it or not, and say, how can I avoid some of this? There's some excellent TED Talks on it. How can I avoid being recorded as much? And you can learn some great things. Even though all of this is true, no matter how much we try, regardless of how oblivious we may be to our surroundings, we are constantly being watched. And if not from surveillance cameras, certainly by the universe. And I'm not talking about weather balloons, although that's a whole other thing. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 9 says, this is, the Apostle Paul says this, he says, for it seems to me that God has put us apostles, us believers, on display at the end of the procession like those condemned to die in the arena. He's not thinking movies, he's not thinking cameras, he's thinking the Colosseum. And then he says, we have been made a spectacle. What's a spectacle? That's a show. That's what a spectacle is. We've been made a spectacle, a theater to the whole universe, to angels as well as to human beings. Have you ever thought about this? That we are a theater to the universe? that all of creation is observing us, that we are being observed by angels, probably unfallen beings in the universe, and obviously humans on earth. Everybody we come in contact with, everybody we lock eyes with is observing us, whether they realize it or not. That is the reality. The Apostle Paul uses these images in different ways. In 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 2 to 3 says, you yourselves, again, believers, are our letter. See, when you're sitting in this church, I'm hoping that you're not just here enjoying the plush, wonderful seats that you're sitting on. But I'm assuming that you're sitting here and you're listening and you are observing and you are absorbing. And then you're kind of like a letter that we send out to the whole world. In one of our churches back in New York, Nancy would remember this, we had, on the way out, we had this big banner that said, on the way out, welcome to your mission field, right? In other words, the moment you step out of this church, you are a letter for Christ. Amen. And it says, written on our hearts, known and read by everyone. Known and read by everyone. You are being observed. You show that you are a letter from Christ, the result of our ministry. Written, I love this, not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. Right before I got up here to pray, Nadine prayed that as I spoke, that God would speak through me. And as God would speak through me, things would happen to you. That's called the Holy Spirit working in our lives. This is the letter. Not on tablets of stones, but tablets of the human heart. Can God write on our hearts? Yes. It's almost as if Paul is hinting to something here. He's hinting to the fact that maybe what's written in our hearts is longer lasting than what's written on tablets of stones, which we call the Ten Commandments. Maybe what we reveal to people is louder than what people read in the Ten Commandments. Because the greatest witness is not me preaching, it's us living. I'm going to say that again. Apparently you didn't hear that. The greatest ministry, the greatest witness is not me preaching, it's us living. It's when we get out there and people see that we are different. Are you different? I want to ask God to make us different today. Different than the rest of the world. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 20, it says this, we are therefore Christ's ambassadors. We are Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. When's the last time you have felt that God was making an appeal through you? We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. Amen. I love this. This whole idea that God is appealing to the universe through those we come in contact with, through us. I don't know about you, that's a little intimidating. But I try to think about this every time I make contact with people. I make sure that my language is pure, that my intentions are pure, and that I will be aware of any moments where maybe I sense someone that is on the threshold of eternity, that I can help them across that threshold. It doesn't happen all the time, but if you're not aware, you'll never notice it. Be aware. Far too many of us are not ambassadors, we've become secret agents. We begin to reason. Religion is a private matter, let's be honest, right? Who am I to interfere? if I could just simply live a life of faith in a consistent fashion, they'll see it, want it, and maybe somehow figure out how to get it for themselves. I get that. Because sometimes I feel that way. But I wonder if there were times, and I'm not saying to bash people over the head with Bible text or anything else, or force them to hear what they may not want to hear. But maybe there are times when we can be sensitive to the need of acceptance, to the need of us serving, to the need of us loving, waiting for that opportunity, seizing the moment. When was the last time you summoned the courage to share Jesus with an unbeliever? When was the last time you prayed, God, please make me aware, make me sensitive? I've been going to this cleaner place for the last 5 years. God, make me sensitive to this person's need. I've been going to this grocery store, I meet different checkout people. Lord, make me sensitive to what they're saying. I've been going to this gym for so long, exercise, not me obviously, but to the gym, exercising, doing all these things. Lord, make me sensitive to those who I'm exercising with. Lord, I've been taking my kids to school on a daily basis, and these moms and these dads, they're there, and they're all friendly, and make me sensitive to the conversations, because Lord, I want to know. I want you to know, Lord. I want to realize that I am an ambassador. And I want you to know that I am willing to be an ambassador. Do you know? Listen carefully to what I'm going to say here. Do you know that you see things, you see life as others often can't? That you hear things others often don't? That you feel what others don't? That you're aware of what others are not aware of? Is it possible that we take for granted the moments that God has for us? To share what we see, what we hear, what we feel, and what we're aware of. I mean, seriously, do you still believe that Jesus enriches lives beyond their imagination? Yes. And do you still believe that our purpose truly is to accept like Jesus, serve like Jesus, and love like Jesus? Yes. That's why we have it written all over the church. That's why it's on our Facebook. It's on our website. It's everywhere. I keep repeating it from time to time here because I want to get it ingrained into our minds, all of us. This is why the Richland Church is here. We're not here to enjoy a couple of hours of nice air conditioning in a building or heat in the winter. We're not here even just to have community. I mean, that's all important. That's all fantastic. But at the end of the day, one of the most important things we can do is to observe and absorb, and then to share, so that we can learn how to accept people where they are, to serve them how they need to be served, and to love them the way Christ would love them. Whether I like it or not, we are being watched. Every single moment, we're being observed. So the big question is not, are we being, but why are we being? You know me, I like the why. And Ephesians chapter 3, Paul says this, that God's intent to put us on display, to make a spectacle out of us, God's intent to put us as the theater of the universe was this, that now through the church, that's us, by the way, in case we've forgotten, through us, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in heavenly realms. Are you catching this? That the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities, not just here, but where? In the heavenly realms. In other words, there are angels right now. And I believe beings from other universes that are intently watching us here on earth, and they're wondering, what is grace all about? What does it mean to have fallen and to have been forgiven and saved? What does it all mean to be in a saving relationship with the God of the universe? That is the intent. That is the reason why we are on display. Through the church, through us, the universe may understand his infinite, boundless wisdom, his never-ending, not of this world radical grace. Through his church, through us, his mercy that exceeds reasonable limits. The whole universe is observing the effects and the results of Calvary. And I'll be honest with you, I'll make this confession to you. Sometimes I think we forget. And I think sometimes we come to church and we play church because this is what we've always done. This is what we've always known. And if you feel that maybe you're slipping into that, that's okay. If the Holy Spirit is tugging at your heart right now, that's okay. That's a good thing. Talk to one of us, pastors, Nancy, Victor, or I. Talk to one of the ministry leaders. We would love to get you involved, because the best way for you to stop that slip is to get involved in ministry. To get involved connecting with people. And there's going to be moments when you're going to feel tired and you're going to feel like, I don't want to do this, but you're going to feel this urge from the Holy Spirit, and then you get up and you do it, and you know what? It feels great. You come home and you say, God, thank you that in some small way you used me today to share, to accept, to serve, and to love. There is no better feeling. The whole universe is observing us. A long, long time ago in a galaxy far away, the prince of darkness accused God of tyranny and injustice. And yes, unbelievable as it may seem, because it is to me, insignificant as you feel, because I do often, here's the truth. God has intentionally chosen you and I to defend his honor. Wow. I don't know about you, but I love that. I love the fact that God would trust me to defend his honor. I think that's what David meant when he said, God, you lead me in the paths of righteousness for your name's sake. We get to defend God in every possible way. That's why we are on display. You know, someone else is observing that we haven't really talked about too much. We talked about all that's happening in the world with the surveillance cameras and the things we're being listened to. We've talked about the angels, and we've talked about beings on other planets, but there's someone else that is observing. I'll share it with you by telling the story. When I was a young guy, And you guys all know I love soccer. My dad took our family to see a Cosmos game. It was one of those rare moments where my mom came and my sister came, which they couldn't care less, but they were excited about going to a Cosmos game in New York. And so there we were at this game. Now, the bad thing was that my dad got these tickets, but he couldn't get them all sitting together. And so most of my family sat together, and I and my brother had to go and sit somewhere totally different. In fact, I didn't know where they were sitting. They didn't know where I was sitting. And so now, come to find out later, I am sitting on one side of the stadium, and my mother and my sister and my father are sitting on another side of the stadium. So, like, this far apart. Now, if you've ever been to a stadium, you know how hard that is to imagine how far you are from each other. But my mom said she just kept looking. From the other bleachers, from the other side of the stadium, she looks and she spots me. And she tells my sister, "Hey, Rosanna, that's Sergio." And my sister goes, "No way. You can't see that far, Mom. Your eyes are bad. No, I'm telling you, that's Sergio." And then she starts yelling in the middle of the game, "Sergio, Sergio." And I'm sitting on the other side, and I'm like, I'm hearing something, but this can't be. It was so faint. And then I look over, and and there she was. Sergio. I think one of the greatest moments in her life was when I stood up and I went, "Mama." In Genesis 28, God promises Jacob these words: "Know I am with you, and I will watch over you no matter where you go. One day I will bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have done all I have promised you." Do you believe that? Because I think that promise is not only for Jacob, I think it's for the Jacob that becomes Israel, that becomes us later on. That promise is for us. Know that I am with you, and I will watch over you no matter where you go, and I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. So when the movie's over of your life, what will the credits say? Who will have been the leading actors and supporting cast in your life? Will God be the director and executive producer of your motion picture? Knowing that your life is on display, will you commit with me today to live differently? Will you? One person in the back, yes? Do I hear two? I feel like an auctioneer now. This is what I mean. We've just gotten so used to it. It's like, yeah, you know what I mean. Come on. Will you commit to live differently with me? Yes. Thank you. I heard that one. Live intentionally for God. And know that you have the awesome privilege to honor and defend your Creator. Don't let the world, as the Apostle Paul says, I love the J.B. Phillips translation, don't let the world squeeze you into its mold. Be different. Be different.